All right, your engine maintenance manual number 252C. Um, for model F67C engine, third edition, 1957, electric motor division. This shows the front three-quarter view model of the 16 of the F67C engine. Front right three-quarter view 567 engine. All right, operation. In a four-cycle engine, the four strokes of the piston are required to complete one cycle with the advance for the intake with the stroke with the compression power and stroke with the exhaust stroke. The crankshaft will make two revolutions per cylinder for each of the power stroke during the intake and exhaust stroke. With the piston functions for the air as an air compressor which operating consumes the power. Two-cycle engine, such as the model 567C, is only stroke with the pistons required for the complete with the cycle events intake and exhaust take place during the parts of the power with the compression stroke with the forward to downward power stroke with the piston deliver the power impulse of the crankshaft. For therefore, the two-cycle engine has twice as many power impulses as a four-cylinder engine with the same number of the cylinders operating at the same speed. The tidal piston of the two-cycle engine is not required for the function as an air pump. The external medium with supplying the air to be provided with a special as designed blower handling the large volume of the air to low pressure with used for the purpose of low force and air into the cylinder through the ports of the cylinder line wall, thus expelling the exhaust gases, filling the cylinder with a fresh charge for the combustion. The cycle events for the two-cycle engine operating with a blower graphically described in Figure 03 explained in the following paragraphs. Figure 03A with the lower end of the downward stroke with the piston uncover the row of the parts of the cycle cylinder liners admitting the scavenging to the cylinder with the flow of the air through the ports of the exhaust valve produce complete scavenging, leaving the cylinder fluid flow of fuel of clean air with piston covers the ports of the upward stroke. Alright, general description of data with the model 56, we'll figure 03B with the piston continue with the upward stroke with the exhaust valve closed for the charge for the compressed air with the 116 with the initial volume with the 600 pound square inch air compressing with the extent with the increase of the temperature of approximately 1000 degrees with the higher the compression ratio is maintained with the low of the speed shortly before the piston reaches the top dead center and stroke with the atomizer with the high pressure of the injector with the combustion chamber with the fuel is ignited with the high temperature of the air continue with the burn until the charge is consumed with the burn charge rapidly builds up with a high pressure with the axe upon with the piston forcing with the downward with the power stroke. General description and data with the 567C diesel engine V-type with a two-cycle engine incorporating with the advantages low weight with a horsepower per weight, low weight per horsepower, fully scavenging air system and solid injection high compression. The accompanying sketches serve to identify the cylinder location ends in the banks and the figure 03D. Just before the piston reaching the end of the power stroke with the exhaust valve open, releasing the gases temperature atmosphere of the piston and cover the impairs. By the time the exhaust has expanded with the point with the pressure lower into the cylinder in the airbox for the cycle is repeated. Alright, the banks of the engine referred to as the main with the governor. The accompanying sketches serve with the cylinders and engine of the bank with the engine with the manual with the governor with the water pumps, low oil pumps maintained with the front end with the blowers, operator, generator, back end. Alright, general data, bore 8.5, stroke 10, compression ratio 16 to 1, idealing 275 RPM, starting speed 75 to 100 RPMs, rotation counterclockwise, angle between the banks 45 degrees, and then it goes over the weights approximately. Rated horsepower varies with the application of engines given in the table of the B with the section 9. Firing orders and displacement per cylinder 567 and cubic inches, number exhaust 4. Valves per cylinder 4, cranking pin, cranking diameter, crankshaft journal diameter, number of the bearings, and then torque value of 567 engine, cylinder head nuts, and C-type engine type liners, so liner 1 and 2, 3, cylinder type liners. Let me just see what line that is on. 200 liners, engine liners 1 and 2, 290 to 300 liners 3, 200 liners start application 50 with the fork rod brass kit with the cap screw with the alterations forward brass cap screws. Check only section 175, 80 split bottom bolts 75. We'll just skip that and then we'll get to the actual reading. Alright, Section 1, Crankcase and Oil Pan. Description, Crankcase. The crankcase of the main structural part of the engine, figure 1-1, is with the seal of the fabrication form with the rigid supporting assembly with the accommodate with the cylinder per hour, assembly with the engine mount with accessory of the ring, major crankshaft, crankcase section with the top deck with the A-frame with the cylinder banks for the side panel with the end plate for the enclosed with the assembly with the two-cylinder banks to the left and the right with the backbone of the crankcase. Each of the bank is formed with the two seal cylinders, two seals channels welded together with the holes over the top of the bottom of the side of each cylinder location. Holes on the top of the bottom permit the liner installation accommodating with the plate for the lower liner pilot with the insert with the holes over the side with the stress for the pilot. Provide with a linear port with the air and supply with the linear inspection with each cylinder location for the bank with the cylinder head retainer with the cylinder part banks assembled the crankcase of the V having a 45-degree angle. The main bearing elbow frame is integrated with the bottom of the crankcase bearing well with the crank cylinder bank with the stress plate with the base rail with the A with the frame with the warp with the provide with the main bearings and case support with the underslug and crankshaft. The airbox for the air surrounding with the liners with the form with the cylinder with the bag and banks with the enclosed with the crankcase and with the end plates for the side end plates and side panels, two air inlet holes, the rear panel end plate and air supply with the airbox for the engine blower with the provide with the air cylinder liners and holes with the side panel with the provide with the gasketed covers. Figure 1-3 allows the allow inspection with the liners and piston cleaning with the airbox and assessing the mounting bolts. Shows top view. You'd have one cylinder head retainer, engine water outlet, cylinder exhaust back, passage, crankshaft bearing, support, sparing mainframe, airbox, and drain hole. Four-cylinder head locating water discharge openings, 5 center crab support, 9 piston cooling oil manifold, 10 airbox inspection port, now 11 pilot insert. The upper dip of the cylinder banks with the separately with the air with the box with the upper exposed with the parts of the crankcase with the located with the deck of the cylinder head liners over the cylinder head retainers over the end each of the bank with the joint with the inward side of the water discharge manifold exhaust elbow with the each of the cylinder retainer from the water discharge of the manifold with the top of the deck with the over the crankcase with the forge with the camshaft support. Ports with the line keyways and integral over the top of the deck formed with the part of the water manifold with the individual discharge over each of the cylinder location. Water discharge over the cylinder head with the tube and extend with the outside with the crankcase with each of the retainer with the application for the cylinder test valve with the oil and the drain channel runs with the length of the crankcase adjacent with the outside of the retainer with the having the drain pipes with the empty return oil to the oil pan with the pipes served with the ventilating pipe tubes. The two remove the water inlet pump manifolds are open. Inlet pipe one-on-one each A with the crankcase of each of the cylinder bank are located on the outer bottom of the airbox. For the front of the crankcase for each side of the main machine hole is provided with the insert with the water manifold tube with the blower support. Cap screws extend through the rear end of the plate with the screw with the plug end of the manifold to hold the ends of the front end of the manifold extend slightly beyond with the front end of the plate where it is held with the counterbore with the water inlet elbow with the supply with the seal with the O-ring with the opening for each manifold, each liner location provided with the application liner water inlet tubes and saddle type connection. Section 9 for the particulars of the water system component. Lubricating in the piston for the cooling oil manifolds over the incorporated with the part of the crankcase lubricating manifold formed by the plate across the V junction of the inner stress of the plates running with the entire length of the crankcase for the opening with the front end of the admits the oil of the manifold opening with the rear end of the permits oil supply to the crankshaft gear train and the oil pipes. Crankcase. Oil pipes depressed with the drill pass for the main bearing for the A-frame with the center with the extent of the main loop, oil with the manifold with the supply, each of the main bearing with the different lengths of the 567 C engine pipes can be used with the 567 series engine, vice versa. Pipes extended above the bottom of the oil manifold, extended with the clean oil supply with the piston cooling with the oil manifold running parallel to the mounting rail each side with the crankcase piston cooling oil pipe with the pipe flange provided with each of the liner location. Cylinder frames are covered the bottom with the crankcase with the protect with the enclosed with the operation mechanisms. Cover the frame with the strongly fabricated with the provide with a flat seal strip with the top of the edge with the synthetic rudder slate with the light metal covered with the easily released latch with the hole with the cover the place with the frame and the spring hinges incorporate the latches back with the cover the permanents with the cover to remove with the raised without removal of the rails. Inspection cover supports are provided with the hole with the cover the insult with the position note. It should be noted that the basic production with the 567 engine crank with the head with the differential diameter of the upper linear bore, have with some of the original pilot running models, all of the 567 engines and crankcase to start serial number 53B2, and starting with a serial number 53875 have an upper linear pilot with a bore diameter of 12.0911, nominal 567 engine crankcase proceeding with the serial numbers which have not been with a reworked with the upper liner pilot bore of 12.061 inches for the nominal with the consequently the different size liners are used for the crankcase and have a different boring with a diameter section 4 with a linear particular oil pan. The oil pan figure in 1 and 2 with the steel fabricated assembly, support with the crankcase and serve with the engine bay for the incorporated with the oil pan oil sump located centrally with the pan with the provide with the oil drains for the oil level of the Baniac gauge extend with on the side of the oil pan sump with the scavenging oil pump with the suction line built with the oil pan with the extended from the sump to the front end with the opening with each of the ending plate with the oil allow oil from the crankshaft with accessory with the end of the housing drain with the oil pan with hand holes each of the cylinder location provided with the gasket cover with figure 1-3 allow with access with enclosed engine parts. Separate air with the box drain tank with the oil pan. Receive any liquid accommodation for the airbox with the drain pipe with the passage with the oil pan with the crankcase mounting rail with the receive the arrangement between the crankcase oil pan with the mounting rails that consist of the silicone rubber cover cord placed in. A groove outside of the bolt line with the entire length with each of the oil pan mounting rail from the small oil ring with the seal plate for the counterboard with the seal airbox with the drain opening with the dowels hole with the crankcase with the oil pan alignment with the original assembly with the crankcase oil pan bolts with the assemble the crab bolts cylinder head liner bolts with the air are held with the after the insulation with the respective location of 1 3/4 of an inch with the 12 crab bolts with the upper crab with the figure 1-4 with the crab bolts extended through the cylinder bank with the upper deck plate with the adjacent with each of the cylinder retainer with the bottom of the bolt heads over the head of the cylindrical seating surface with the wet seat with the like surface of the bolts being held with the position by the separate plate and cap screws for each pair of the bolts with the square bolts head fitting to the correspond with the holes of the plate which prevent the turning of the being of the torque with the lower crabs of the not used for the C crankcase for the upper crabs used for the contact cylinder heads except from each end of the except from the end of the center crab with the 16 cylinders engines hold the power assembly firmly in place at the top of the cylindrical surface of the crab receive the crab note with the mating of the cylindrical seat. 4. The main bearing stud bolts. Main bearing stud bolts shown in figure 1-5 with the figure A-frame with the 1/4 with the 12 luberized main bearing studs extending with the center of the A-frame with the cylinders engines, which have 2 each of the pass for the toe of the A-frame with the main bearing with a capsule for the lower end with a 6.5-inch bellow with the A-frame with separate serrations. Lock wire holes provide a lower end of the stud with the 5/16 with a transverse hole with the upper end of the stud with accommodates 1/4-inch bolt which passes through the end stud and slots for the upper nut with a semicircular D-shape with the nuts for the use for the upper end of the stud with the flat adjacent with the nuts with the mating with the prevent turning with the upper nuts have the cylindrical seating surface too. To match a similar strip for the A-frame with the center of the A-frame with a 16 cylinder with the engine of the distance from each of the retainer assembly with the prevent with the upper end of the nuts with the run from turning the retainer assembly with the held in place over the nuts with the 1/4-inch with the bolts which pass over the nuts with the stud with the lower main nuts running with the conventional slot with the hexagon nut with the lock wire with the securing with the nuts original main bearing stud with the 8-shaped D-shaped nuts for the cylindrical special insert locks for the stud with the supersede with the nuts for the using the pinning nuts of this retainer described plate with the prior to U with the retainer with the which with the secure with the 3/8 with the cap screw with the vertical run into with the center of the bolt stud with over the top with the C2 with the under the maintenance tube with the new ports with the old stud with the serrated joint with the tube with the as an all frame to the parting line with the the caps to supply with all the frame within line with the board with each of the cap must be with the caps with the A-frame with from the not interchangeable identified with the matching A-frame with the cap both jams and with the corresponding bearing number. Engine crankcase oil pan serial number. The serial number of the chamber identification blunt list with the model engine located with the right side with the 6 inches below with the cylinder cover frame base between the center cylinders. The serial number of the chamber for the left corner with the crankcase under the cover of the frame base for the engine serial numbers consist of the month of the year of the manufacture for the consecutive of the engine for the month of which was built with the alphabetical letter represented with the ABC for the month and the corresponding A, January, B, February, and so forth, as in I, which is not used. For example, the 54E and 125 identified with the 12 of the engine for the build in 1954. Each month in the letter chain for the numbers of the M start with again at 1 with the year symbol corresponding with the last two figure for the current year for the cylinder crank serial numbers. Also have a like engine for the year for the month of the manufacturer consecutive with the crankcase manufactured for the month. For example, the 54E 98 was identified with the crankcase manufactured in 1954 with the 98th crankcase built in the May. Care should be taken that they're referring to the crankcase serial with the number of the include with the number of the cylinders of the word of the crankcase over the otherwise possibility misinterpretation between the crankcase engine serial number the oil pan serial. The numbers are located with the left side of the oil pan with the crankcase supported with the base of the front of the rear. B. Maintenance. For the crankcase, do oil pan seal application tightening with the before the seal application and inspect for the oil pan for the rails, nick for the burrs, for the foreign material, for the end of the can, with the seal, with the groove, with the remove, with the provide, with the clean, smooth, with the indentation, with the seal groove, with the base of the rail, will it allow with the oil seepage must be filled with the solder of the finish of the flush with the affected air with the along the outside of the edge of the oil rail pan supplied with the air applied with the cove with the top. Tight seals number 3 with approximately 1/2 of an inch width of about 1 and 0.0151 thick, foot thick, and of the thickness of the ordinary playing card. Installing the seal with the groove with the twisting, with the stretching, with the lubricant, with the individual seal with the model on engine longer than they require, but do not cut off the seals end of the time. Place crankcase oil pan over the oil pan with a using line with a pin guide with a fork on with a hole of the lower crankcase oil pan with apply with the tapper dowel and bolts and tighten with a check with the crankcase oil pan alignment with using the care to damage of the seal cord. Caution: do not pull the stretch end over the seal cord with the assembly with the crankcase oil pan with a washer with a snug four corner with the bolts with the 100 foot-pounds of the torque. Torque all bolts over the 100 foot-pounds of the torque with the sequence of the table of 1 starting with the number 1 bolt. Repeat the same sequence, tightening all bolts to 450 foot-pounds over the and also all bolts after all bolts have been tightened to 450 pounds of the cut seals cord ends to provide with the seal protrusion from the face end of the blade of 3/32 of an inch plus or minus 1/64 of an inch. The steel protrusion will seal with the three-way joint oil pan crankcase and house. All crank oil pans have been tightened with the run regular intervals with the accordance with the mileage indicated with the scheduled maintenance program. Table 1 shows the crankcase oil pan tightening diagram. Alright, 2 main steering bar. The threaded side of the bolt within the bearing strap with above with 1/4 inch with the by 12 with the 2 with the cap thread. Clean up with the reds 1/4 inch 12 with the red die with the 8060341 can be used, while 1 and 1/4 inch 12 tap the 8060387 can be used at the end of the stub and the 8 with the obtained with the cork with the torque value for the thread should be clean with the 4 with the parts of the application. Upon application, each is rather than serve into its place with the all frame with the running into nut until the 5/16 with the hole of the top of the stud line with the bolt slots with the nut with the lock wire end of the stud with the 6.5 inch. Plus 1/16 minus plus or minus 1/16 with an inch for the variation with the A-frame with the stud with the broad out with the cylindrical surface of the upper nut with the contacting leg with the surface of the A-frame with this is sure with the lock wire with the passing with the slot with the lower stud with the bearing cap with the applied with the nuts with the tightened properly. 1/4 inch bolt with a self-locking nut may then be applied with the upper nut with the assembled with the except with the center A with the frame with a 16-cylinder engine. The upper nut with the flat contacts each other with a place for the A-frames, except for the center of the A-frames with the 16-cylinder engine with it separated from each other. Retainer blade with the U with the center of the A-frame with the upper nut to prevent the turning of the turning. A stud then has to been run into the nuts of the proper amount with the retainer, which is like channel with a place over the nut for the 1/4 inch for the implied with the pass for the retainer. And the stud in across the nut slots for the bolts of the retainer with the different widths of the one slot being larger. Take the bolt head with the prevent with the turning with the tighten with the retainer with the string channel with the cutaway with the one side with the provide with the clearance with the snuffer. stiffener plate between the center A of the frames of the 16-cylinder of the first crankcase having stiffener and serial with the number of the 551321 engine having the serial number of the 55C1 16. Original main bearing studs do not have the 5/6 U with them inch through the hole at the top of the bottom of the 3/8 of an inch 24 tap hole with the top of the sub of the which is U with the screw with the center of the bearing of the run nut retainer originally U with also have the original stud with the nuts have special inserts in addition with the regular nut thread over the parts with the continue with the replace with the cylinder with the parts with the previously described with the slide with the nut with the quarter inch of the be used original design stud with the stud with the must have with the 5/16 of an inch drill hole through the quarter 14 3/16 of an inch of the dimension with the bottom of the lock wire with the stub with the threads with the clean after the drilling. If either a new nut or the new retainer has been applied with the old style with the studs, the center A-frames of the 16-cylinder engine, both studs must be drilled with the bolts. Both nuts or retainers must be newly designed. In application for the original stub of the insert with the type of the upper nut of the bolt of the stub of the running of the insert with each of the stub with the run insert with the retaining correct length of the all frame 16.5 inch by 1/16 of the inch retainer with 3/8 of an inch 24 cap screws in the center with the A-frame of the stud. Upon removal of the stud bolts have been backed out with the insert before the individual removal. Bearing cap originally was applied with the A-frame, then our line bored through the interchange with available to replace the muscle applied with the same A-frame for the same with the original position with is removed with each for the cap of the A-frame and the stamp of the right side with the bearing number addition with all of the cap at the end of the A-frame with our stamp with the crankcase serial number before with the cap. Original check with the seriation cap of the A-frame with the remove any of the birds from foreign material to provide with a good remaining fit. Torque value with the main bearing with the 500 to 800 foot-pounds for correct assembly of the nuts should be brought up to 500 pounds with the tighten with the further with the line with the first with the lock wire with the hole with the breech with the assure with the torque value being within 500 to 800 foot-pound range with the check with the main bearing with the dimension of the torque value of 650 pound bolt should be used with the main torque with the mount with the out of the round with the limit with the main bearing with the 3,000 for the inch likewise with the main bearing bore dimension limited with the torque maintained at 8.249 foot, maximum 8.2454 inch of the average of the 6 measurements of the 3 taken with the end use of an end bore. Main bearings of the 821951 same set. Similar shaft of the 8155 363 used on the other series with its 567 engines may be obtained with the U of the 567C engine within the wrenches support with the oil pan inspection or opening with the also with the 819 1591 off its reach of the ratchet available the running up at the loosening main bearing nut with the for more information for the tools the last revision of the tool catalog number 91. Facilitate the measure for the crankcase with the A-frame with the cap distortion seriation over the gauge with the number 8177167 may be used with the gauge for the semicircular fit around with the crankshaft with the seriation prong with the fit with the A-frame with the cap with the separation seriation with the cap one prong activate the dial micrometer with the distortion is ready directly with the dial with the micrometer with the maximum limit of the nominal A-frame with center with the center line with the dimension of this plus for the 3,000 inch plus or minus 3,000 inch which may be read directly with the gauge with the indicator with a separate master gauge with the provide with the checking with the fixture with the distance with the crankcase have with the series extend with the maximum limit with the return with the for rebuild with the series of the factory rebuild button. Bulletin number 109. Crab bolts. After the crab bolts are removed, the bolts must be removed through the airbox after removing the crab bolt retainer plate with the cap screw and plate with the crab bolt threads with the clean with the using 1/3 of an inch thread 12 thread die with the 8067409 with the nuts thread clean with the U for the tap guide 1/3 of an inch 12 is the 805068. Whenever the crab threads are exposed, they should be protected with the thread caps 8034600 air crab bolts now 15 by 1 and 16 of an inch long compared with the original length with the 16 and 1/16 of an inch. The torque value with the cylinder head with the crab bolts with the 1800 foot-pound with the plus or minus minus 5% and the power wrench with the number to 8211089 for the tightening of the crab nuts available for the hour parts department with the mechanical advantage of employing with the sword of the tire wrench. Before application, reassemble with the crab with a special washer with the nut with examine with the burrow with the roughness of the galling which would affect with the true with the torque value with the should also be lubricated with the time of the assembly even the lubricate with the have the specification similar with the Texaco stove line lube 921 with the engine tube of oil with a cab bolster with a maybe time with the tube pass with a half torque with a each with the pass type with the diagonally opposite it. Notes alternately to the form of the letter X of the method applied with the tightening with the entire bank with the cylinder after the final cylinder assembly with the ring the engine wire with the temperature of 170 degrees with the torque crab nuts liner stove with the per opera torque of the recheck with the intervals specified with the schedule of the maintenance program. Note, one end of the liner and the crab bolts are running with the tightened with a move of the less with the specified torque value, but it should be tightened with the proper value. If you do not move below and upper proper values should be checked with pulling up the valve not exceeding pulling up to a value of not exceeding 10% of the more with the recommended torque gauge. Alright, 4. Low cylinder bore insert with the replacement of the low lubricized cast iron insert with the 1/6 for the U with the lower cylinder bore with the crankcase with the provide with the wear surface with the lower inliner pilot with the seal held with the groove with the liner pilot to prevent the air passage with the between the insert with the liner with the addition seal compound U with the insert spline line with the inside with the diameter insert with the reach with the maximum dimension with the 10 and 3.386 inches of the insert must be removed with the new insert installed with the clearance with the between the lower inlet pile with the insert with the bottom sauce be checked with the S9 with the extent with the insert with the linear plot diameter clearance with 0.15 inches as shown in figure 474 feeling compound 8222724 1 pint can should be applied to the end with the crankcase with the before installed with the lemonade with the possibility with the air with the leaking from the airbox with the oil pan with the thickness of the compound with the insert with the should be 1/6 with the thick after applying with the compound at least 2 hours of the drying time with it before the reinstalling with the insert with the tool the 8212763 you can apply with the remove of the crankcase insert. Tool 8212764 insert for the compression is used with the tool 8212763. These tools are shown in figure 1.7, the low cylinder bore and low cylinder bore insert and application arrangement. With the insert applying and removing the die tool and removal of the arrangement compress tool. 1 insert 3/4 of an inch 10 with the spindle, striker, dowel plate, center plate, screw, center ring, center bore, handling, holding ring, boss nut, screw, nut, brushing, puller plate, boss nut, screw, and clamp plate. Alright, tool use 8212763 and player insert applying with a symbol of the part of the end of the spindle and K figure 1/6 with inverting the holding ring of the plate with the tool or plate with the plate inside the holding ring with the use of the compression tool with the 8212764 with the bottom of the insert reduce with the inside with the diameter install with the puller plate with the place with the holding ring on the top of the outer edge with the insert with the remove with the compression tool. After assembling with the insert with the shoulder with the bottom threads with the tool spin with the top of the insert with the tool with the tool striker with the piston tool with the insert with the cylinder bore with use with the striking drive insert all the way down into the its bore with the remove of the insert with the remove of the hand holder with the puller plate with the end of the tool with the apply with the cap plate with the upper thread portion with the spindle insert with the tool assembly with the cylinder bore with the position with the clamp with the plate insert with the from the upper underside with the insert with the plate with the puller plate spindle end with the inverted with the compare with the insert with the installing position use the striker against the spindle with the top nudge and drive with the insert with the board. In the event of the proceeding of the install with the remove of the tool with the 8212763 with the compressing tool 8212764 with it not available, the insert should be applied with the remove with the raw head wooden mallet with the wooden drive block for the prevent the damage with the crankcase with the apply with the insert with the compressor with the allow with the starting with the bore with the tap allow with the way down into with the bore the outer edge with the rat resistor and that solidly with the counter bore the remove of the drive with the insert with the bottom with the working around with the circumference of the three with the from this bore with install with the insert should be applied with the gap with the insert with the end of the cylinder bank longitudinal center line with the gap toward with the either end of the engine of the bottom edge of the engine insert with the 60 chamber or 8 application. 5 airbox drain with the engine airbox accumulation cell with a 2 drain tank with the incorporated one on each side with the rear of the oil pan with the valve with the provide with the drain with the tanks siphon arrangement with the tank should be drained with an appropriate frequent interval with the tension with the given with the discharge notation noting that any of the water with excessive oil with accumulation in the airbox with the discharge with the noted with the drain pipe with the airbox with the drain closed the airbox accumulation should be investigated. 5. Crankcase inspection. Serious crankcase failures can be avoided with a longer crankcase life obtained with a careful periodic crankcase inspection. Careful inspection may disclose with some of the small discrepancies would if they were allowed to progress with the might result with a major failure with the loss of service, the loss of the crankcase inspection early with the trouble detection with the repair with the most important. Similar major repair with generally with it cannot be done with the field with an instant with a major repair with an individual with requiring extensive welding. It's essential with the crankcase with the must be severe stress relief with the machine with the necessary with the these tend with the short with the life with the life over the limited number of times with the can be done in addition with when the engine failure occurs due to the breakdown parts with a careful inspection and essential are locations of the intermediate area. Media damage, for example, the engine failure with the connecting with the rod, damage of the linear pilot with the plate with the rod, and also strike with the nick with the stress plate with the most over the important. Remember the stress plate ends by be expected within the whole of the opposite line with the, if any of the nicks are found, but they must be blended out with the stress plate with the subject with the shock loading of the nick may be served with the possible stress over the concentration of the may lead with the cracking of the recommended with the crankcase with the requiring rebuilding, reconditioning, return for the work. 7. Return of the engine crankcase with the sensitive of the crankcase oil pan and cover the frame with the made butane with the same length with the proper assembly with the engine of the housing part, therefore with the returning crankcase oil pump and oil pan and covered frame should be returned with the event with the crankcase with the plate and with the end plate required for the machining and the oil pan cover the frame with the machines and the match clean crankcase with the crankcase should be cleaned with the if any one of the work done with the interior of the engine with the remove of the particle in the middle of the dirt. But this can be done by using spray gun number 8193041 and solve with the equipment near of the engine should be protected against spray. Every spraying with the top of the tank with the cylinder head of the rocker arms, etc. Wipe with the towel with the saturated with the solvent. Wipe it all with the solvent tapped into the nail with the corners and the pockets. Use only with the lintless and bound edge towels. Clean the air box with the spray gun with the linear with the place with the not with the recommended practice with the possibility of solvent entering linear liners at the cleaning of the airbox of the liner for the place with the only budge bound over the edge of the towel patrolling solve with the if after any time with the cleaning of the done with the crankcase with the case with it should be given the oil passive with the bearing surface gears etc. with the gritty with the material that will not be trapped with the clearing information for the crankcase for the engine part with the contained with the maintenance number number 16706. Or engine painting. If the engine removed with the strip of the complete with the overhaul with the interior with the repaint with the part with the paint with the must be cleaned with a vat with a calisthenic solution, remove the old paint with the grease with the old parts with the pores of the motor with over the metal with the calisthenic solution must be thoroughly with the removed with the washing with the part with the clean hot water with the air dry with the air hose, the aluminum part with the not washed with the calisthenic solution with the calisthenic cleaning with the not done before painting with the paint will peel with the interior with the engine with the restricted with the lube oil lines mask off with the parts with the not painted. Using crankcase paint with on the following with the interior crankcase with the oil pan with the blower support with the top deck with the cylinder head with the cover of the frame of the except with the seal surface with the accessory with the camshaft driving housing. Down painting with the machine surface with the line with the head with the seal surface with the refinish with the exterior of the engine removed with all grease and oil using the alkaline cleaner with the mask of fuel and mask of water, fuel, and oil and cleaners, oil connections. If required, with the apply with the coats of the primer, the either number they give them with the apply with the finish with the coat. Sude gray 5 gallon, 1 gallon contains all preceding the paint that they are desired. Alright, equipment list: spray gun, bottle edge, towel, crankcase paint, 5 gallon, 1 gallon, suit gray paint, 5 gallon, crab stud protector, crab stud thread die, crab set in the cabinet, main bearings, bolt thread, main bearing nut, tap, power wrench, insert tool, insert compression tool, lower deck boring bar, pliers, C handle, use a berry bore, repaired loaner liner part with the insert bore, 567 engines. RD specification main bearing bolts, length from seriation 6.5 inches plus or minus 16 of the inch, main bearing bolts minimum. Diameter 8.249 inches, max 8.25 inches. Out round is 5,000 of an inch. Lower bore diameter limited, upper limited, and nominal boring, lower limited, nominal boring. Alright, section 2, cylinder head assembly.